Which is crazy that you guys eat Burger King every day for lunch.
Damn near. Well, we. Hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry, we're having a separate conversation. I'm sitting here at the kitchen table in my winter office, my winter headquarters at my kitchen table. And we're sitting here, and I'm telling this story to nobody right at the moment, but I'll tell you in a second. What is up, everybody? How we doing? Three people. What's going on? Don Terry, Scott Duranda, Stephen Eddie. What's up, buddy? What's up, Wiz? Saw you out with Don Nelson today, man. Nice job. No, Courtney didn't catch a fish for me. Not yet, anyway. Merlin Johnson, what's up, Wiz? Keith Horns, what's up, buddy?
We can have our contest. Who's going to get the first fish off the dock?
She's over there. Any of you that are married, I don't know if all of your wives talk in the same gibberish that mine does, but I hear a lot of, it's somewhere near the teacher in the Peanuts cartoons. Wah, 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 wah.
I remember that.
Wah, wah, wah. Somewhere around there.
What goes around comes around.
She's still mumbling. Now the pitch has changed a little bit, but it's still. She's saying it now purposely so I can't hear her. Oh man, look at how many people are here tonight! Holy crap! I put out good vibes in.
Why?
My own wife just goes. I said, "Oh, look at how many people are here," and she goes, "I'm not sure why."
Because you're rude.
She's a peach.
To me only.
She's a beaut, Clark. Oh, shit. That's funny stuff. I can't even keep up with who's here. Stephen Eddie, Merlin, Keith, what's up, buddy? Brian Heatherly, Nat Lussey, TG, Alex Peer, what's up, man? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, what's up, Bob? Louis LaPlante, Ed Roser. Wow, Adrian White, Wayne Foote. Look at everybody. Rob H. Thad Lance. Yeah, Bob, of course, is encouraging you. Shocker. Shocker. Bob is Team Courtney. Let's just get that out there. Stephen Eddie, you better be nice until the new boat's in the yard. I know. I'm waiting for the ink to dry on her check. It's the only thing holding it up.
Your dream.
She promised.
Did not.
She promised. So I'm sitting here at the kitchen table at my winter office, and
making up lies.
and there's a commercial. We got the TV on mute because the TV's right there. And all of a sudden I look up and I said to Courtney, "Oh my God, this is the soap opera I used to watch." And she goes, and I've told her this story before, but she goes, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, it's The Young and the Restless." And when I was in high school, I grew up in Central Square. I grew up in Beeville. I graduated from Central Square. And in high school, I think it was my junior year, guy up the road from where my mom lived had a body shop, and he had a whole shop in a big garage in the backyard. My good friend and mentor, Mike Hall, Customs and Classics. Mike was the best painter around. No question. My God. And everybody brought him their nice stuff. Like we weren't really a collision shop, but Mike would. So I worked there, and my buddy Rob Nowak worked there with me too. But I started first, and I worked there for 6-8 months, and then And then Rob came and started working with us. But Mike's rule, like Mike was the best, man. Mike is the best. He bought lunch every day. So this would be in the summer, and all summer long. And he had a bitchin' absolutely, of course, he did the paintwork on it. He had like a late 70s square headlight Chevy short box, lifted up, bigger tires on it, was pearl white. He'd let you drive that up to Central Square to Burger King or Subway or Drex usually. In those days, Drex was right in Central Square, right at the light. But you had to time it because you had to have his lunch back there to the shop by 12:30 because that's when Young and the Restless came on. And lunch was between 12:30 and 1:30. So he had no problem buying every day, but either Rob or I had to plan how we finished what we were doing to have enough time to go all the way up to Central Square and back with lunch. I never forget that. So for years, I watched The Young and the Restless every day because we'd sit and eat our lunch with Mike and watch The Young and the Restless. So
Wow.
I guess I don't think there was anything weird about that. 3 grown men watching a soap opera every day. I don't believe, but hey, that's why I was laughing when we came on because she was teasing me about watching soap operas, which is rude.
I used to watch Days of Our Lives.
Days of Our Lives. So here in Syracuse, this was on Channel 5. It was on CBS. I don't know why or how. I know that because I used to have to turn the TV on there too, because Mike would already be sitting down where he was going to eat in the shop. The TV was in the corner. Hilarious what repetition does in fond memories. Let's see who's here. We're still seeing who's here. Oh, Rumble Seed. I'm not even paying attention. John Burroughs. Well, it's 90 every day now. A few more 100 games of pickleball and we'll be home. John, I want to like you, but when you say things like that, I'm wearing a sock hat. It was back to rainy and wintertime conditions today. Alex, my friend Alex Pierce has produced 1.5 gallons of maple syrup today at Piers and Beers Shack. I have a jar for you and Courtney. Oh, you're my hero. Homemade maple syrup, man. Love it. Carl Capper, good evening. Jim G, what's going on, buddy? Biting my tongue, says my friend Keith. Stephen Eddy says, I was hospitalized for months and got hooked on soaps. Yeah, that's funny. It was hilarious. That's so funny. That's so funny. Scott Tagata, what's up, buddy? So I had an idea for tonight, everybody. I had an idea. Well, one, it was a joke, and then it was an idea. And so I showed you guys this the other day, right? Everybody wave. How many people actually have this delivered still to their house? I do. So, it's that time. I mean, the boat really could be back in the water probably at this point. It's on my list to do either this week or weekend. But how many people still get this? My God, you're going to laugh at this one, babe. John Burroughs says, I had mono in high school, got hooked on General Hospital. Oh, John, that is so rock star, buddy.
Why didn't anybody watch Days of Our Lives? Marlena was possessed by the devil.
Days of Our Lives. I don't know. That wasn't, like I say, it wasn't up to me. It was Mike. It was his shop. Oh, God, that's funny. funny. General Hospital. And John Burroughs is the same guy with that beautiful nitro boat of his that he won't let you bring the fish once it's in the net, in the boat. You have to unhook it in the net outside the boat. So I don't know. Maybe General Hospital rubbed off on John. Oh my God, that was funny though. Bob Bender. Oh God, that's funny. John Burroughs says he still watches it in between pickleball games. Holy shit. So it's only older.
I can't stop laughing.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, let's talk fishing. So we're gonna have to be interactive here a little bit. All right. You guys work with me. We got a lot of people on here. I get magazines and I read them year round, and there's nothing more exciting than Nudie Magazine Day.
Hey, weirdo.
Does anybody remember Al Bundy saying that? Anybody remember what Al Bundy used to get in the mail? It was like jugs. Jugs was one of them, and Biggins. Yep. And there was more too. Oh my God, Al Bundy rules. Anyway, this time of year, like, it's no different than watching YouTube videos. YouTube videos for fishermen are modern magazines. Videos are like articles, and you're talking about something in a specific moment in time. Well, techniques are a little different. So in the wintertime, I've always used my winters, even though I was a pretty rabid ice fisherman. I don't know. For me, and everybody's different, ice is just in between open. I don't know. I'm not an ice fisherman first and foremost. I'm an open water fisherman, So in the wintertime, I would use that as a time to, like, in the old days, read magazines. So this article, I read a little bit every day. Shut up and don't say anything. Where I read is irrelevant, but rip jigging. And so, the thing I've always loved, and I say it all the time, the thing I always loved about in fishermen is in the linders, and what made them so amazing is they took something that is somewhat unknowable, and it's not really, you can't really squeeze it tight, but they put a formula to things. Fish should, seasonal movements. Fish should be here at this time of year for this reason. And once you're in that general area, then you're going to look for this, and this, and then you should be able to narrow your search down, and then you're going to present this lure at this much line at this deal, and that's where it's going to get bit, and so, but all of those things people come up with one day. People come up with it probably first by accident. Even if it's intentional, until it happens the first time, you still don't have any, scientific evidence. But then repetition in different circumstances, and repetition in different spots, and then repetition, that's how you build something that you would call a technique, especially if it's a specific technique, and we're all specific, but this would be something new in a genre, and this article is rip jigging, and it's talking about this guy, and this is a new magazine, so I'm assuming he's still alive. Dick the Griswinski. He looks a little like a cross between Father Time and Santa Claus, I guess. Let's see if we can get him from the article, right? I mean, that's a fair assessment. One bearded man to another. He's holding what looks to be a monster of a walleye. I'm assuming a Minnesota guy. He's giving the fishing world is giving him the nod as the father of snap jigging walleyes. He used to do it with little 1/4 ounce round ball jig heads. probably in those days. And the picture it shows right here had the gold hook on it. They were dull as hell. With chicken feather, white chicken feather with a red collar where it's tied. Not bucktail, chicken feather. And listen, I'm sure it's because they, Christ, live near a farm in Minnesota. I don't know. But this stuff's fascinating, and it's in rip jigging is, and a lot of people do it in a lot of different ways and call it different things. The way this guy did it originally was with a round ball jig head and trolling it, pulling it, and then ripping it forward and following it back with the tip on a tight line. But it was not tight, but it was still going. You were within you still had contact with your jig, and you put it right back down. Now this is in 10 foot of water or less. So, and this guy supposedly is doing this year round. Or if the heavy weeds are coming in, he's out on a weed edge. Of course, he said if you go over 10 feet, you need something heavier than a quarter ounce. But he's pulling these things at 1.5. I might have to check that. Maybe it said slower than that, but he was still moving forward. And purposefully, like he was on a tiller. He's on a tiller doing it. 1.5 to 2.0 with a quarter ounce head. Anything shallow, structure, mid-lake reef, doesn't have to be shallow shoreline. Could be shallow other places. And that's what he's doing. And so these guys are all there's a bunch of them all telling stories about this guy who did this. He goes to the Linders Fish Camp Jamboree, did they call it? And what would you give to be in one of those back in those days, especially? Al Linder is quoted in here as saying that this guy was invited along with however many other people to this event they did every Camp Fish Jamboree. I was right. Camp Fish Jamboree. And, it's the best of the best, hosted by the Linders. All like-minded people. Can you imagine the hive mind sessions that they produced? And they all fished together for however long they were up there at this probably exclusive lake that it was just them and all that. And this guy caught 300 walleyes in a weekend to everybody else's 60 or 70, and everybody else thought they'd had a good weekend. And this guy just tuned them. And Ron Linder, who some will argue is and was the fisherman between him and Al, but Al was better in front of the camera. Who knows? I love Al Linder. My God, he's like, Al Linder is the best. And there's a lot of greats, but he's number one. I don't know how you don't. And maybe you put him and his brother right at number one. I mean, and I'm okay with that. I can't think of anybody more influential. What was I saying, though? How do we get on in fishermen? You have to be quicker about that than the sighing.
I'm not listening, so I don't know.
I had mono in high school, hooked on General Hospital, so I guess we're still there. So I wanted to talk about this rip jigging technique. Oh, that's right. We were talking about Al Linder because this guy went there and just cranked on him in front of all these other guys that were giants of the industry. And there were other guides and stuff. And, it's funny. I've drifted straight downwind and sat off the side of the boat and ripped jigging wraps like that. And I mean, you're drifting with them and you're drifting. I mean, at that speed, you're drifting downwind, you're going 1 to 1.5, maybe more worm harness. Worm harness, you want to be right about 1, but you can go up to as much as 1.5 on the very high side, depending on how you're pulling them. So I thought we would just talk about that for a few minutes. And if you guys had any questions about that, I mean, it's It's just a different way of skinning the cat. But this guy is, yeah. Scott says they say the mind's the first to go. My first thing to say is, huh? But I read these articles with fascination because I always think of techniques as just another tool in your arsenal, just another. Now you can get out of control with it and try to do 17 things at once, and you don't commit to any one thing fully, and if you have in my belief, if you have your foot, 1 foot out the door all the time on a lure or on a spot or on a technique, you're going to spend a lot of time driving around, going spot to spot, making 5 casts that you don't even know what you want to do yet. Fish there or not. I just like learning about these things, and it interests me, and I've already thought to myself, I got a few. I definitely have some hackle laying around upstairs in the fly tying box. I might throw together myself some of those original jigs and listen, white jig and a black jig. It's like a silver and a gold blade bait. There's a lot of variations from silver and gold, but silver and gold alone will still catch them. Black bucktail, white bucktail. Okay, perfect. There's a lot of variations in between, but you can catch them on those two. I mean, my buddy that when I started going to New Jersey to see Courtney, and then I met this guy out on the beach. He was from right there, and he was hardcore, man. That's all he did, and he fished every day. He lived right near the beach, and he had a whole little pouch full of bucktails on his belt, and they were all white, and every one of them was white, and they were in different sizes. So what's that tell you? And most times he goes, that's all I fish. He goes, if I have plugs with me just in case something starts breaking on the surface or a popper or something, he goes, but it's usually he's ripping a white bucktail through the surf, and anything that lives there eats it, because in the flash of an eye, something white goes by. It looks like a minnow, whatever. That's what it is. Black on the bottom. I mean, black anywhere, but black on the bottom. TG says, I like to follow Tom Boley. He's always rip jigging either Acme Hyper Rattles or even swim baits, and he's crushing it. Yeah, that is his. I love Boley. And I've been watching him for years. And I have done exactly what he's been doing and brought it out on our lake and had success, because I again, people can argue, but to some extent, the basis of what you do for a species shouldn't change that much depending on where they are. And something like he's doing with that snap jigging, and he's even a little different. He's hunting those fish individually because he's doing a lot of it vertically. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know, maybe that'll be something I try this year, is to focus on verticality more, because I don't normally. I like to drift jig because that's what I've always done. But I enjoy it, and you cover a lot of water. He's driving around finding a fish or two, throwing it in his tiller in reverse and jigging right off the back of the boat, boop, just like that, and getting on them before they feel or see any disturbance, and he gives it 3-4 cracks right in front of their nose. He goes, if they don't hit it by then, they're not gonna. And he goes, 90% of the time it's on the first one. It's either on the first up or it's up. There he is, and he snaps it. He snaps those Elliott rods of his. Boom, boom, boom. There's a time and place for everything, and the more you commit to things, the better you get at it. repetition breeds success. You figure out all the things that aren't working for you and you get them out of your repertoire and refill them with things that are working. So like nothing is beyond figuring out, just depending on how much effort you're willing to put into it. I don't ever think I'm just going to randomly go out someplace and catch fish. There's a method to every bit of madness. And when we get back on the water, some people on here weren't around when we put the boat away. They've come in since then. When we're on the water, it's different, and I for my own, it's funny, for my own peace of mind, I can only do the same thing for just so long especially in the same spot, which tells you how good that bite was last year out by the buoy. Boy, it was good every day for months and months and months. Like, you had to follow those schools around a little bit, and there was certainly days that didn't go as planned. But boy, day in and day out, those fish didn't leave that flat. They lived in that 20-foot flat from outside the weed line to the max depth. Weed line's 15 feet, and max depth is on that end right there is like 20, maybe, and a little deeper the closer you get to Wantry. And it's funny, that's a big open quadrant up there, and I never got up in there much this year because I didn't have to go. They were right there. And man alive, caught a lot of fish in there. But this, I would like to do right on those weed edges, especially when I'm a little more mobile with a bow mount, and just pull myself along those weed edges. And again, you could do that with anything. They're talking about, so they're talking about bucktails like this. And then that grizz jig is the one that's on the front right there. But I don't know if the jerk of it, if the rip of it and the speed is the trigger, then it shouldn't really matter what you have on, right? You could do the same thing with jigging wraps, any style, and you would just adjust your speed and your size to the size of, I would think you would use the smaller ones, especially shallower. And I'm looking forward to getting back on the shoreline and fishing those shallow rock shores. I love doing that. I love fishing shallow as much as I can for non-shallow species, like catching walleyes in 5 foot of water or less is a blast. And man, they just attack so fast. I don't know. It's awesome when they're in there. I put my glasses. Yeah, we got a bunch of people going on here. Joe Smelkoff, what's up? Don Terry, I love Don. Says, when I stop learning new tactics and ways to be more productive, I'll put my poles away. You forced me to learn and fish blade baits last year. And it's funny. And it's funny. I know Don doesn't mean I forced him to in a negative way. And if he is, then it's Tony Buffa's fault for doing it to me. So blame him. Anyway, it's just it's funny. I get a lot of satisfaction out of fishing that blade and the whole process of it and feeling that, and the knowing every time. And I really enjoy it. It's just, it works for me, whatever my mental, capacity or makeup is. It works for me. I enjoy it. I can't imagine I'm alone. And some people do and some people don't. A lot of people say, I got a whole box of them and I can't get them to work right. And the one thing I will say to that is, I promise all of you, the moment we're back out on the water, we're going to go through. I'll do it daily if you want me to. We have found, and in this case, when I say we, I mean the owner of I1, Mike Urema, and myself, and he's imparted a lot of knowledge because he's been doing these. I mean, they spent, Mike spent a year and a half or more, I think he told me, going through different molds and changing the way the lead was and making sure that that blade was balanced and then it ran right and all of those fun things. It's not just something that he's putting paint on. And his baits, they have a different feel, and I fished all of them, Demikis, and there's the balance to his that's right, and the fish prove it more than anything. The fish prove it because, man, those blades catch fish. Oh, they catch them all. I mean, catch them all. And so Don's like, you forced me to learn that, but it's a great thing to have in your bag. There are some days and some times of the year where I switch to other things for a lot of reasons. I love fishing swim baits. I do like fishing jigging wraps sometimes. I love to catch them on swim baits. And the more the finesse, the better. I am a light tackle guy at heart with most everything I do. I try to do it as light as possible and still do it correctly. But I love that fight and everything on lighter gear. I don't want to reef on them and change their life in 1 second and just crank them in. I want the whole deal. Jason, good evening. Just getting home from another 13-and-a-half-hour workday. Gonna have to go fishing tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. You booked Tuesday, Wednesday. You still have Thursday available, right? Scott DeGata, no, it is not. Scott's asking about the boat deal. Not finalized yet. I'll let you know. Believe me, you guys will be the first to know. Yeah, John Burrows says, Matt, I've done that down in 30 to 40 feet, and it works just like Tom's videos. He's talking about vertical jigging them. Yes, I have done it. I've done it some. My boat doesn't stop on a dime, so my big boat. So I didn't really do much of it. Most of what I do is drift fishing, partly, again, because of necessity. TG says, boat control is huge, though, and tough thing to master. Well, your boat's got to be set up to allow you to master it. Because the idea, well, of course, now modern technology allows us to have such a thing as spot lock. So that's pretty wonderful. If you have a tiller, it's a little different situation. And you can, if the waves aren't too big, some people will back troll in that situation. Some people will just back the stern into it and keep it, just keep feathering it and try to stay vertical over something. But boat control isn't a terribly hard concept. You just have to be able, you have to understand it, but you have to have a rig that will allow you to do it. And like I say, my boat really doesn't. My boat is a drifting boat. Mimi says, back in the 70s, the yellow buckeye was the best. You're talking about just the straight yellow bucktail jig with the yellow head and the red eye, right? Hey, Etrix, what's going on, Eric? Possibly a shad dart? Thad Lance, sure. It would have to be big. I mean, well, again, let's not get confused. This article is based on 10 feet or less. And so early spring from opener right through till depends on how fast it warms up and before the weeds get up to where you can't rip jig through the weed, you're probably talking June. You could do that for a month. But after that, I'm sure you can still do the same thing outside the weed line in 15 foot. You just got to go with a heavier jig. So he's doing this with a quarter in 10 foot or less. So you go to what? 3/8 from 10 to 20, 10 to 20, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 3/8. And once you get on the 20 side of it, if you're trolling with any speed, you'd have to go to at least a half. But again, a big what is it? And big number 9 jigging Rapala. I mean, that's well over that, and I bet you could rip that all day long down there. I've done that drifting, never pulling it as trolling. Hiram Moore, I was launching my boat last summer after work about 5 p.m. A guy says been slow all day, only caught 3 to 4 walleye pulling worm harnesses. I went out throwing blades and probably caught 10 to 15 in an hour. Sure. Well, and we could say that for anything. Different person, different time, different circumstance, different spot. A lot of things to consider there. And listen, you guys know me. I don't ever say there's only one way to do anything, because that would just be a complete and utter lie. And that's there's no reason to say it, because it can be a lot of things all at once, and they can all be right. And we don't ever have to get hung up on I'm more right and you gotta. There's a lot of different ways to do things. You could have went out and thrown any number of things in any number of spots, catch rates. It's funny. We all talk to each other like, how'd you do today? And if someone tells you they did cruddy as you're leaving the ramp, you're going to, heading out, you're going to be like, oh man, he did cruddy. We're going to do cruddy. If they did good, we're going to do good. I get the mindset. But it's, there's so many variables in fishing. So many. Eric Wisniewski says, Boofa butter. No, Eric, he didn't get me hooked on Boofa butter. He got me hooked on fishing blades. My daughter's birthday 4 years ago, babe. 4 years ago, I think. At the time, I was boatless. I did not have a boat, so it must have been 5 years ago. I called Tony. We booked a trip for her birthday. Her dad used to, her biological father used to take her fishing every year for her birthday, and he was gone. So I tried to keep the tradition going, and we booked Boofa. And I said to Tony, tell me what to bring. And he goes, no, he goes, come on. I got everything. And he goes, I'm going to show you how to fish a blade. And I thought to myself, at that point, like the only thing I ever really, really fished walleyes with was a black and purple bucktail tipped with a worm, quite honestly, all the time. I remember the first time I saw Brian Hammond catch a walleye on a bare black and purple bucktail in 10 foot of water and on the South Shore. And I looked at him like he was the devil, or like telling me a story or something, because I'm like, how can you do that? There's no worm on there. Why would they bite it? These guys aren't fishing any bait on this rip jigging stuff. It's just the jig itself. And that, to me, I still have a hard time sometimes wrapping my mind around fishing a jig bare. And even when I do, I tend to throw it and then think to myself, yeah, but it's really not why. I don't know why I'm doing this, because there's no bait on it. There's no worm on it. So I'm not going to catch anything. And then I take it off after 5 casts. And so I don't fish bucktails anymore, because I don't fish worms. I have once in a while, I'll have them with me, but that used to be the only way I did it. And now I don't ever do it. So, and that was that day with Boofa. And we smacked them. It was me and Courtney and Gigi and Gigi's friend Julia and Tony. So there was 5 of us on the boat. I don't know. We didn't get our limit, but we damn close. We had a lot of throwbacks, but it was like a 25-mile-an-hour east wind, third week of May for her birthday, and we went as far east as we could. We finally ended up right off the North Beach, um, in like 20 to 25 foot of water, and we spanked them, but we started catching them. I ended up catching 12, 15 fish that day, on blades, and I was hooked. And in those days, Tony was throwing. Mike wasn't even, I don't think, was even selling yet as I won. Tony was fishing those 5/8 XPS Bass Pro blades, silver and gold. Gold when it's cloudy, silver when it's sunny. Done. And we left that day, and I went and bought two, and then bought a boat again, and the rest is history, they say. I know. Don corrected me. He goes, "No, your success forced me." I know. And that's why I do. That's why this year I want to do more stuff technique specific, which is why I'm talking about rip jigging tonight, because I'd like to do more technique stuff where guys can, because maybe if they see it done on their own water, they'll allow themselves to go, "Oh, I'm not looking," because I used to think and again, I watched and read in fishermen religiously, but all those guys were from Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that to me was like a foreign country out there. I'd never been there. I still have never been there. It wasn't like it was right next door, but they were fishing for the same fish. It was walleyes and smallmouth were the ones I was always interested in. And we had those fish, but it just never seemed like it was exactly like what we had here. And I wasn't really, really sure that it would work. And when you have that doubt planted, that seed of doubt planted, boy, when you water it, it grows, and you water it by thinking, maybe it won't work. But if we did more technique specific stuff out here, then you could show people. My goal is to help everybody enjoy the sport more, and to catch a few more fish, and to have more fun while they're fishing. And catching fish isn't the only way to have fun, but boy, it's sure nice. And a lot of people, sometimes it's just never had anybody show them, or explain it where they went, "Oh, now I understand." I'm a big fan of explaining something to somebody in a way that they really understand, not just what they're doing, but why. Because why is the motivation, in my opinion, humbly. Why is the motivation, And I like to teach. I've been a professional guide half my adult life. Half my life, period. Sorry, not my adult life. I like to teach that. And the same way is that I like to learn it. So I don't want to mistake that. I don't have everything figured out. I learn stuff too. And like these kind of things I like to do together, and maybe we'll figure out a way to make the video medium work to where we can be a little more interactive. But certainly on the boat, we can, whether I say I'll fish through certain things and explain what I'm doing and start to make a process and see this, we tried this, it worked right away. Great. Mark the conditions and then see the next time if it can repeat, or they were here, but they didn't bite this. And now maybe we're going to go like this. And we're going to do it deliberately. And we're going to start going through different things, because listen, most anything any of us have in our tackle boxes now, if it's even remotely considered a walleye lure, you ought to be able to throw it into the bottom where the majority of your walleyes live. A lot of them suspend, but let's not talk about them right now. You ought to be able to throw something to the bottom and go like this with it. And eventually, oh, there he is, I mean, that's the expectation. We have 1 million adult walleyes in this lake. You're going to run into one sooner or later, and I like to prove how many things you can catch them on, not just, oh, I caught something once on this and I'm only ever going to fish this again, or really getting pigeonholed on things. I love the everything about trying something else and new and different, and hey, will this work? Just because it entertains me. But we can do that together, because a lot of these things we can still teach the technique, and talk our way through and show as I'm catching or not catching what we think we need to do differently, and then try it out in real time. That, I think, sounds fun. I really want to make a purposeful effort to, we'll do lives every day, from the water, wherever, we're just like we're doing. But then when it comes time for the feature show, maybe it's once a week, or maybe it's, we'll see, but have it be multiple segments, like one segment is on rip jigging and we do 5 or 10 minutes on that, and then something else like that. I think that's where we're headed with the show, the weekly show, not the live. I got to go back. Oh, 70s, the yellow bucktail was the best. My grandpa had boxes of the yellow ones and the all brown ones, like the regular natural color calftail or bucktail, and then the combination, the brown and yellow together. Yeah, they said they used to call that all tan brown one sandpike. I guess nowadays you'd probably call it a goby, and it'll probably work just fine. Probably more than fine. Put a little stripe of purple in it, like a lateral line. That was the one when we killed our deer. We took the tails and tied our own. Yes, Mimi. Yep. Eric Wisniewski, back trolling is deadly. Linders love it. Absolutely. Matthew Weimer. I almost said Wiener. Sorry. That's why I stopped myself. I'm an adult. That's why. I'll be up in May for my second trip on Oneida. Such a cool place. Hope I learn it a little better. It's a big lake, and my suggestion to you is do some homework beforehand. Narrow down. Try to make yourself not spin out in big water. Okay. Think of how you want to do something and then figure out where you want to do it, and at least give yourself a solid starting point with spot, technique, species, as many of those as you can check off, because now you have focused in. Just like when you pull up on that deer, Gramp used to always say, pick a hair, not a brown spot, not in the shoulder, pick a hair. So the narrower you can make that, you're really focusing on a spot. Now that spot may be a quarter of a mile on a drop off. You're going to find, but at least now you're in an area. How do you want to do it? I'm going to throw a drop shot at them, or I'm going to, here's the wind, and look at those kind of things. Prevailing winds, although there's no such thing as a prevailing wind on Oneida Lake anymore. I know for a fact we had more east wind days last year than west. I know for a fact. I know for a fact. The more you look at maps beforehand, the less intimidating it will become when you get here. Have an area. Listen, come along. Be with us every day. You're gonna have at least some idea of what's going on through here alone. My buddy Etrick's getting all philosophizer on me. He says, just being on the water is a blessing. Catching fish is a bonus. Amen, my brother. I like bonuses, though. Bob Bender. When I started fishing a night of 50 years ago, everybody used white bucktails. And you could, like I've told you, I've caught stuff on my Gramps old tackle. Like we could have a day where we all went out and fished old tackle day. Old found tackle boxes from garage sales or grandfathers or dads and or childhood, and tie something on and go out with it, because I'll bet you're going to catch a fish. Something that's not in favor, not in flavor anymore, doesn't mean it won't work. A white bucktail, a yellow bucktail, you name it, lures catch more fishermen than fish, especially in all the crazy colors. There's, you can do a lot worse than starting out. If you fill the box with your best baits in each subcategory, you could really narrow it down to really 3 or 4 colors. And I'm one to talk. I mean, I've got a lot of colors of a lot of things. Although my blade box is not extensive by any means. And I know the guy that owns that makes them, but it's not. I have 3 or 4 subcategories of blades. I've got brights, I've got gold, I've got silver, I've got black, I've got perch, and I've got copper. So I've got 6 subcategories. So within each subcategory, there's some variations. Homie is a black. He's a black and a gold. And I've never tried a black and silver on a sunny day. I don't know why that wouldn't work. That's a pretty good idea. Huh. Who would homie's buddy be if he was black and silver? We'll have to think about that. Hope I run into you out there. Yes, absolutely. Do I launch out of the river? I live on the river, so yes, I come out of the river every morning. Ed Roser, it's funny, I grew up fishing Sylvan Beach with my grandfather, and all we ever used was brown jigs and silver head and sonars. That was 45 years ago. Of course, he could catch walleye in a mud puddle. So, Ed, that's a great, I've been talking to the dealership about, what the rigging is on my boat and the electronics, and we're figuring out everything. And even with my Garmin unit that's in my old boat, that's in Gramps' boat, the day that I put that thing in and fired it up, he just was smiling from ear to ear, because I remember the flasher that we had in the boat years and years ago. And then it went to the LCD, little narrow screen on a Lowrance unit. And it gave you the little fish symbol on there, But I think about the technology. Your Gramp could catch walleye in a mud puddle, and he looked at a paper map, and he lined himself up with landmarks, and he rode probably early on, and probably wasn't until later in his life that he had even a little outboard to go on the back of a skiff that he would normally row. But those guys caught fish, and they weren't screaming all over the lake and checking it out to the nth degree. Now, I don't know. Maybe the fish were less pressured then, and they were dumber, and they bit more. And I don't know. Neither does anybody else, unless you were there. But I don't know how to quantify that. But those guys did. Of course, at the time, it would have been between those guys. That where did they get their map from? Maybe, I don't know, if there was map makers or some shit. You want to see who had the most detailed version of a map, because that's all they had. but they had something, and so they were using the best of the technology that they had in the day. But imagine what they would think of some of the technology we have now. Watching that fish, like when we were ice fishing with the live scope, that's the most I've ever used one. You're in real time. Here's your lure, and here comes him, and it's real time. It's crazy. It's crazy. E-Tricks, I have a white X-Wrap that is my absolute favorite lure, and I've never caught a single fish on all. I find that hard to believe. X-Wraps are deadly no matter what color they are, and white has got to be outstanding. Man, I've been talking for an hour. Why'd you guys let me keep talking? How many people remember the sink pipe, Mimi says? Everybody should. Everybody should, and that had a bad name in a lot of places that wasn't necessarily bad, because that lure caught a lot of fish legitimately a lot of the times, and was deadly in the hands of the right people. And it was homemade and hot as pistols. Oh, Jim Wildbrookies, when are you going to be out in the big lake for those big browns? Soon. Scott Tagata says Eric at E-Tricks, talk to the whiz on white lures. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Eric turned me on to a white deep KVD jerkbait that's deadly in 15 foot of water. So, all right, it's been an hour. I've talked way too long. Love you guys. Have a great evening. See you all tomorrow. Keep your tip up.